It's been 3 years since my heiress sister, Zoe Hudson, blocked me. She donates $1 to my Raindrop fund campaign and leaves a comment dripping with mockery. Lung cancer, huh? Let me know when you're really dead. I'll throw a party. 3 years ago, Andrew Lane, the needy student she's been sponsoring, accuses me of stealing his college admission spot. Zoe flies into a rage and has me pulled out of school on the spot. Even if you couldn't get into college on your own, I would still have your back. He snaps. But stealing someone else's spot? That has to be punished. We have a massive fight. That ends with her coldly kicking me out of the house. Come back when you realize what you did wrong. I refuse to believe I can't fix that rotten attitude of yours. Since then, she has treated that needy student like a prince. For me, she makes sure I lose every single job I land, until my only way to survive is picking through trash. I stare at her comment blankly for a long while, before calling a cemetery plot salesman. Please hold the cheapest one for me. I'll send you the deposit tomorrow. The single dollar Zoe donated is just enough to hit the withdrawal threshold. I'll give her exactly what she asked for. Look, you'd better hurry. You know how fast plots go these days. Cemetery plot salesman said over the phone, sighing. His meaning was obvious until he saw the money. Nothing was official. I understood why he was pushing me. Over the past year, I'd looked at cemetery plots several times, but could never bring myself to reserve one. They were simply too expensive. Between my medication and treatments, I had barely anything left. Every once in a while, I'd go back to see if any cheaper plots had opened up for me to snatch. Every time the salesman asked which one I wanted, I could only mumble awkwardly, "Never mind, I'll bring my family next time." But this time, my voice was steady. "Don't worry, I'm actually buying it." After hanging up, I switched my screen back to the Raindrop Fund page. In the sea of comments wishing me a speedy recovery, one stood out. It was from my sister, Zoe Hudson. Lung cancer. Huh? Let me know when you're really dead. Throw a party. I read it over and over, still unable to believe those words had come from my own sister. Yet, thanks to the dollar she donated, my balance had finally reached an even $10,000, making it eligible for withdrawal. I pressed my lips together bitterly and was just about to tap the withdraw button when a new donation and comment suddenly popped up. It was from Andrew Lane, the needy student Zoe had sponsored. He donated 1 cent and left a comment. "Chase, come home. As long as you apologize properly, Zoe will forgive you. Don't fake something like this again." My fingers tightened around my phone, but after a moment, I said nothing and submitted the withdrawal. Peanut, the stray cat I'd taken in, seemed to sense something was off with me and kept rubbing against my feet. I crouched down to pat his head, then poured the last of the cat food into his bowl, filling it to the brim. He immediately limped over and started eating. He was a disabled cat with a badly broken leg. As he ate, he kept glancing back at me. When I met those pleading eyes, my own stung with tears. I felt like I was right back on the night Zoe kicked me out of the house. I could still hear her disgusted voice, cold enough to cut to the bone. "If you won't admit you were wrong, then get out. I don't want you anymore." 3 years ago, Andrew had barely handed over his college admission spot to me before he turned around and told Zoe I'd bribed a teacher to steal it from him, put his entire future on the line, betting that Zoe would blow up. The only teacher who could have vouched for me had retired and was traveling abroad. No one could reach him. Andrew had timed it perfectly, and his bet paid off. Zoe flew into a rage, refused to hear a single word of my explanation, and had me pulled out of school on the spot. I broke down, and we had a massive fight that ended with her slapping me hard across the face. "Chase Hudson, you've never wanted for anything a day in your life," he snapped. "Did you really have to steal?" Andrew clawed his way up from nothing. "Do you have any idea what that spot meant to him?" When she ordered me to apologize to Andrew, I refused, stubbornly insisting that I had done nothing wrong. So, in the end, she kicked me out of the house. That day, I just sat outside waiting for Zoe. I thought she was just angry in the moment, and that she'd call me back inside when she cooled down. But by the next morning, she still hadn't come looking for me. Just as I gave up and was about to leave, I saw a man walk out carrying a cat. The cat, its leg broken, was thrown hard to the ground and let out a shrill, miserable yowl. The man's face was twisted with disgust. The way he looked at that cat was exactly the way Zoe had looked at me. "Stupidest cat I've ever seen," he barked, climbed a tree, and still managed to break its own leg. "Get out. I don't want you anymore." My eyes snapped to him. For a split second, his voice overlapped with Zoe's. When I snapped out of it, I rushed over and scooped up the dying kitten. Only then did I realize his leg hadn't been broken in a fall. Someone had deliberately snapped it. I wanted to confront the man, but he'd already gone back inside and shut the door. That was the moment reality finally sank in. Kat was just like me. It didn't matter whether we'd done anything wrong or not. If someone wanted to toss us aside, they would. They didn't even need a reason. Just like that. I took the kitten in and named him Peanut. Over the next 3 years, Zoe sabotaged me every chance she got, both openly and behind my back. She ruined every job I found, until my only means of survival was picking through trash. Peanut's life sank right along with mine. The places we lived got smaller and smaller. The cat food I could afford got cheaper and cheaper. I posted an adoption listing online. I had already decided that the money from the Raindrop Fund would go toward a cemetery plot instead of treatment. Since my illness couldn't be cured anyway, I figured I might as well die the way Zoe wanted. Still, I had to find a good owner for Peanut. He had to live a good life in my place. What I didn't expect was a call from Raindrop Fund's customer service. 2 hours later, "Is this Chase Hudson?" the representative asked. "The fundraising campaign you created on our platform has been reported for suspected fraud, so your withdrawal has been rejected." Then she dropped the bombshell. "The person who reported you was your sister, Zoe Hudson." A boom went off in my head like fireworks, exploding inside my skull and blasting my mind blank. "Who did you say it was?" "Zoe Hudson," I demanded. "Yes. She provided proof of her relationship to you and reported that your medical records are fake. Our platform is currently verifying the claim. Until the information is confirmed, the donations you've raised cannot be withdrawn." I could hardly believe it. It felt like being plunged into ice water. My medical records came from a top-tier hospital. "There's no way they're fake," I blurted out. "She has a grudge against me. She can't wait for me to die. Please calm down, sir." The representative cut me off, then repeated, verifying it now. "So, don't worry. Once we confirm everything is real, the funds will be released to your card right away." My whole body was shaking, but I knew there was no point in arguing with customer service. As soon as I hung up, I called Zoe, realizing that at some point she'd unblocked me. The second the call connected, I shouted, "Zoe Hudson, why did you tell the Raindrop Fund I was faking my illness? Do you have any idea?" "Aren't you?" Zoe cut me off, her tone as casual as anything there. There was even a hint of amusement in her voice. "Chase, I know how stubborn you are. You can't bring yourself to come home. So you're pulling this stunt to make me cave first. How about this?" She went on, sounding magnanimous. "Home and apologize and I'll pretend none of it ever happened." Her voice continued in my ear, but all I could feel was my heart sinking like a stone, straight into a well. So that was the kind of person I was in her eyes. I tightened my grip on my phone, suddenly at a complete loss for words. In the silence, Andrew's voice drifted through the line. "Zoe, is that Chase? Just let him come home. Honestly, I stopped blaming him for what happened 3 years ago." Zoe's tone hardened. "I know you're the bigger person here, but Chase needs to understand what he did wrong. He's my brother, and I won't let him get away with behavior like this." Though the words were spoken to Andrew, I knew they were meant for me. A cold laugh escaped me, then slow and deliberate. I said, "Zoe, I did nothing wrong. He framed me, and I'm not faking anything now. Every single one of my medical records came from a top-tier hospital." Refusing to give in, I added, "I will never apologize. Even if I die, I won't admit to something I never did you." Before she could get another word out, I hung up when she immediately tried calling back. I simply ignored it. The sudden flare of emotion was too much. My chest heaved as a sharp pain spasm through my lungs. A moment later, a text from Zoe came through. "Chase, I'm very disappointed in you. I didn't sleep that night. It felt like countless tiny needles were piercing my lungs. Every breath hurts so much I could barely stand it. My prescription painkillers had run out long ago. I just held Peanut in my arms and white-knuckled it through the night. When dawn finally broke, I got another call from the Raindrop Fund. "Mr. Hudson, our platform requires you to undergo another round of testing and submit an updated medical report." "What if I don't?" I asked listlessly. "For a disputed fundraising campaign like this, if you refuse to cooperate, the funds will be returned to the donors. Then return them. Sorry for the trouble." My voice came out flat, and I hung up. I didn't have the money for more tests anyway. If I couldn't get that $10,000, then so be it. Peanut burrowed closer into my arms. I managed a weak smile. "Hungry? I'll go collect some bottles and buy you food." "Okay." He couldn't understand me. He just purred and tilted his little head. I washed up grabbed my sack, and headed out to save on rent. I lived on the edge of town. The local seniors already had a monopoly on the cardboard and bottles in the neighborhood, so I had to head toward the downtown shopping malls. There were more wealthy people there. Their empty bottles were worth more, and they were usually easier to approach. If I politely asked if they needed help throwing away their trash, they'd hand over their empties. 2 hours later, my sack was half full. I was heading toward another mall when a sharp, startled voice rang out behind me. "Chase, what are you doing here?" I turned to find Zoe staring at me in shock. Beside her stood Andrew, loaded down with half a dozen luxury shopping bags. They'd clearly just finished a spree. I frowned and turned to walk away. Zoe closed the distance in a few quick strides and grabbed my wrist. "How could you be digging through trash?" Her face darkened as her eyes swept over me from head to toe. Her gaze landed on my washed-out jeans. Something complicated flickered in her eyes. Andrew leaned in. "Chase, you really know how to play the victim, don't you? Since when do you scavenge for garbage? Or did you know we were shopping here today and decided to put on a show?" Zoe's expression grew even darker. He grabbed me and dragged me away. "Come home with me," she snapped. I struggled with everything I had let go of me. She dragged me into a corner, shoved my hand away, and turned on me. "Look at yourself. What do you think you look like? All I asked was for you to apologize, and instead you choose to do this. Then what exactly do you want from me?" I looked up, my face blank. "You ruin every single job I find if I don't dig through trash. What else am I supposed to do? Can't you just come home?" She snapped. "You know, all you have to do is apologize and I'll forgive you. Is that so hard?" I looked at her with an ironic smile. "You just think I'm an embarrassment, don't you?" She opened her mouth to speak, but Andrew suddenly cut in. "Chase, seriously, you smell? Don't you notice it?" Before I could say anything, he added, "You need to practice some basic hygiene. You're still part of the Hudson family. You should at least think about Zoe's reputation." I looked over and met his taunting gaze. The needling pain started stabbing through my lungs again. "You're the one who's part of the Hudson family now, not me." I threw down those words, turned, and walked away. Behind me, Zoe's voice turned ice cold. "Chase, you still refusing to admit you're wrong? Fine. Don't regret this." I pretended not to hear her and quickened my pace. That day, I couldn't sell the bottles and cardboard I'd managed to gather. The owner of the recycling station sighed. "Look, some big shot named Hudson put the word out. No one in Seville is allowed to take your recyclables." Waved me away. "Don't blame me. I've got to make a living in Seattle, too. A big shot like that has too much money and power. I can't afford to cross her." I didn't bother arguing or pleading. I just nodded, hoisted the sack of recyclables onto my shoulder, and walked home. That was the day Peanut left me, too. A young woman named Bonnie Anderson. Didn't mind that Peanut had a broken leg. He'd driven 2 hours just to pick him up. Peanut had a new home and a new person to love him now. It was something I should have been happy about. But when I handed him over to Bonnie, something came over me for no reason at all. Tears started streaming down my face. "Bonnie panicked you. Are you sad to let Peanut go?" "Don't worry, I'll take good care of him." I wanted to tell her that wasn't it. I wanted to tell her I was dying, and that Peanut could only have a good life with someone else. But the words caught in my throat, refusing to come out. Bonnie asked with concern, "You look really pale. Do you need to go to the hospital?" I shook my head. I didn't need a hospital. The only place I was going was hell. Grief, resentment, heartbreak, emotions I couldn't even name closed in around me. Peanut kept meowing, and every sound made me feel worse. All I could do was turn my back on them. "Please go, hurry." Bonnie promised me again. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of Peanut." With that, she carried him away. I collapsed onto the couch, feeling like my soul had been ripped straight out of my body. But a few hours later, Bonnie called. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. Peanut ran into the road and got hit by a car. The driver paid $2,000 in compensation. "I thought I should tell you. I'll transfer the money to you." The notification chimed twice. A soft, clean beep from my phone that felt absurdly out of place in the dark, damp room. "Transfer received. $2,000.
Zenda, Bonnie Anderson."
Note: I am so sorry. About Peanut. I stared at the glowing numbers until my eyes burned. $2,000. The price of a stray cat's broken life. The price of a hit and run on a rainy boulevard. My throat hitched. A sudden, violent spasm tore through my chest, and I slammed my palm against my mouth to stifle the cough. When I pulled my hand away, dark, metallic-smelling blood was smeared across my palm, dripping into the cracks of my callous skin. I didn't bother wiping it on my jeans. They were already stiff with grime and rain. I tapped the screen with a trembling, red-stained thumb and dialed the number I had saved 3 days ago. The line rang twice before the cemetery plot salesman answered, his voice thick, with the noisy background hum of a busy office. Cedar Ridge Memorial, he said briskly. This is Miller. It's Chase, I said. My voice sounded like dry leaves scraping across concrete. Chase Hudson. The she plot in Section F. The one by the drainage ditch. There was a pause on the line. I heard the rustle of papers, the click of a ballpoint pen.
Ah.
Mr. Hudson. Miller's tone shifted, losing its crisp, professional edge and taking on a wary, almost pitying tightness. Look, I told you yesterday I had
2 other calls about that plot.
It's $1,800 outright, plus the $200 filing fee. If you don't have the deposit. I have the full amount. I cut him off softly. $2,000.
I'm
transferring it to your office bank account right now. Silence stretched over the line. Miller cleared his throat, suddenly sounding awkward.
Oh.
Well, all right then. I'll send the digital receipt to your email. When do you want to finalize the paperwork in person? You can. Bring your family down tomorrow to sign off on the deed. No family, I said. Just me. Just issue the title under my name. If someone comes asking to claim the body when it's over, tell them I already paid for the hole in the ground. They don't owe anyone anything. Mr. Hudson, are you? I hung up before he could finish. The screen flickered back to my banking app. Balance, $2,001.14. The single dollar Zoe had donated to mock me. The 1 cent Andrew had thrown in
to humiliate me.
And the $2,000 paid out for Peanut's crushed
body.
I authorized the payment to Cedar Ridge Memorial. The numbers plummeted back to
0.
$1.15 remained. I leaned back against the peeling wallpaper of the room, my breathing coming in shallow, ragged rasps. The room smelled of wet rot, copper, and cold rain. Outside, the downpour hit the tin roof of the tenement building with the rhythm of falling dirt. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 3 years, my mind felt light.
I
didn't need to scour the gutters for aluminum cans tomorrow. I didn't need to dodge Zoe's bodyguards or endure Andrew's condescending smirks. I had bought my
peace.
It was 6 feet deep, waterlogged, and tucked away behind a row of rusted chain-link fences, but it belonged to me. In the top-floor office of Hudson Enterprises, 60 floors above the gray fog of the city, Zoe Hudson adjusted her diamond-studded wristwatch. Has he called back? She asked, not looking up from her tablet. Andrew Lane sat across from her on the calfskin sofa, swirling a glass of 20-year-old scotch. He looked impeccably tailored in a custom charcoal suit that Zoe had bought for his 24th birthday, the same suit brand Chase used to wear before he was banished. No, Zoe, Andrew said softly, his voice laced with gentle, deliberate sadness. I checked the Raindrop Fund page an hour ago. The campaign status was updated. It looks like he pulled the listing down entirely rather than submit to the platform's medical reevaluation. Zoe paused, her pen hovering over a contract. Her brows pulled together into a sharp line. He pulled it down? Yes, Andrew sighed, shaking his head with a look of profound disappointment. It's just as we thought. If his lung cancer were real, why wouldn't he just go to the hospital and get a fresh doctor's note? St. Jude's is 20 minutes
away.
He could have cleared his name in an hour and gotten the money. Because he's too proud. Zoe spat, her voice cold, though estranged. Uncomfortable, not tightened in her stomach. He'd rather play the martyr than admit he got caught in a lie. He thought I'd see that fake campaign, panic, and throw money at him. It's sad, really, Andrew murmured, taking a slow sip of scotch. 3 years. And he's still using these low tricks. First stealing my admission spot, now faking a terminal illness for public sympathy. He really hasn't changed at all. Zoe stood up, walking over to the floor-to-ceiling glass wall overlooking the city skyline. The rain streaked across the glass, blurring the distant yellow lights below. I saw him today, Andrew, she said, her voice dropping into a low, quiet register. At the West Side Galleria. He was wearing clothes that looked like they came out of a dumpster. He was carrying a sack full of plastic bottles. Andrew's eyes flickered with a brief, hidden flash of malice before he smoothed his expression into pure sympathy. He knows where you shop, Zoe. He staged
that.
He knew if he looked miserable enough, your sisterly instinct would kick
in.
I know, Zoe said, but her fingers tightened against the cold glass until her Knuckles turned white. I know he staged it. But he was so thin, Andrew.
His
Face, it looked hollow. Chase has always been a good actor, Andrew said, stepping up behind her and placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Remember 3 years ago? When Dean Vance called us into his office? Chase cried. He swore on your dead parents' grave that he didn't buy the exam leak. He tried to blame me. He looked so convincing back then, too. If Dean Vance hadn't shown us the forged wire transfer receipts, you would have believed him. Zoe shuddered at the memory. The bitterness returned, sharp and hot, burning away the sudden wave of hesitation. He swore on Mom and Dad, she remembered. He looked me in the eye and lied. You're right, Zoe said, hardened her heart, staring into her reflection in the dark glass. He needs to hit rock bottom. Truly rock bottom. When he has nowhere left to run, when he's sleeping on concrete, he'll finally come to you and apologize properly. I don't even need the apology, Zoe, Andrew said softly, pressing his cheek against her temple with fake sweetness. I just want your family to be whole. Again. I just want him to stop hurting you. Zoe's phone buzzed on the mahogany desk. She turned and picked it up, expecting a call from her head of security or a board member. But the caller ID displayed a number she hadn't seen in over 3 years. Dean Arthur Vance. Zoe frowned. Dean Vance was the former dean of admissions at the Institute of Technology, the man who had overseen Andrew's scholarship and Chase's expulsion. Before retiring to Europe 3 years ago, she tapped answer and put it on speaker. Dean Vance? It's been a long time. Zoe. A heavy, elderly voice came through the speaker, raspy with jet lag and
age.
I just landed back in the States yesterday afternoon. I'm staying at the downtown Regency. I need to see you immediately. Zoe blinked. Is everything all right, Dean? If it's about the university's endowment fund. It's not about the endowment, Vance interrupted, his voice thick with an urgent, somber weight. It's about your brother. It's about Chase. Andrew's hand stiffened on Zoe's shoulder. His glass tilted slightly, scotch sloshing over the crystal rim onto his wrist. Chase. Zoe's tone chilled instantly. Dean Vance, if Chase reached out to you to try and contest his expulsion again, I assure you. Chase hasn't reached out to me, Vance snapped, his voice suddenly sharp with a dark, terrible anger that made Zoe freeze. The police did.
2 weeks ago, an
international investigation into a dark web academic fraud ring concluded in Zurich. The men who sold those leaked entrance exams were arrested. A silence fell over the penthouse office, heavy as lead. They seized their servers, Zoe. Vance continued, every word falling like a drop of ice water. They found the original transaction logs from 3 years ago. The wire transfer that framed Chase. The digital paper trail didn't come from Chase's account. It was routed through an offshore shell company registered under Andrew Lane's tax ID. The room went dead silent. The rain outside seemed to quiet down, leaving only the sound of Andrew's heavy, sudden breathing beside the desk. Zoe stared at the phone. Her brain felt strangely numb, refusing to process the words coming through the speaker. What did you just say? I said Chase never bought the exam, Zoe. Dean Vance's voice trembled with a mix of rage and profound shame. Your brother was innocent. Andrew Lane stole Chase's application file, bought the leaked answer key using a stolen credit line, submitted it under Chase's name, and then turned around to play the whistleblower so he could secure the full board-sponsored scholarship. I was
tricked.
You were tricked. We ruined that boy's life. That's a lie. Andrew suddenly screamed, his smooth composure shattering into terrified hysteria. He lunged forward, reaching for the phone to kill the call. Zoe, don't listen to him. The old man is confused. He's senile. Chase must have paid someone off in Europe. Zoe didn't scream. She didn't cry. With a move as fast and cold as a striking snake, she grabbed the heavy crystal Scotch decanter from the desk and smashed it across Andrew's face.
Crash.
The glass exploded. Amber liquor and blood sprayed across the white marble
floor.
Andrew let out a high-pitched shriek, clutching his nose as he collapsed onto his knees, blood pouring through his fingers. Zoe, please. Andrew sobbed, backing away on his hands and knees, leaving a smear of red across the carpet. Listen to me. I did it for us. He was born rich. He had everything. He had you. He had the Hudson fortune. He had a path laid out for him. I had nothing. I was just a beggar from the slums. I deserved that spot more than he did. Zoe stood over him, Her body was shaking so violently that her teeth clicked together. She looked down at the boy she had protected for 3 years, the boy she had bought clothes for, fed, treated like a younger brother, while her real brother was sleeping in alleyways. You. Zoe's voice was a whisper, a sound choked with a terror so deep it felt like her chest was collapsing. You made me hit him. Zoe. You made me slap my brother across the face, she shrieked, her voice cracking into a jagged scream that echoed through the empty penthouse. She kicked Andrew in the chest with the heel of her shoe, sending him sprawling into the broken
glass.
You made me kick him out in the cold. You made me ruin every job he tried to get. Andrew groaned, coughing blood onto the floor, his face pale with horror. Zoe, please.
I am sorry.
Security. Zoe screamed into the intercom on her desk, tears finally bursting from her eyes in a scalding flood. Get up here now. Call the police. Tell them to arrest Andrew Lane for fraud, forgery, and extortion. Get him out of my sight before I kill him. Within seconds, 4 heavy-set security guards burst through the double doors. They didn't ask questions. Seeing Andrew bleeding on the floor, and Zoe hysterical, 2 of them slammed Andrew onto his face, ratcheting his arms behind his back, while the other 2 stood guard.
Zoe.
Zoe, don't do this. Andrew screamed as he was dragged across the threshold, his luxury suit torn, his blood smearing the hallway walls.
He hates
you anyway. Even if you find him, he'll never forgive you. You left him in the trash for 3 years. You killed him too. Shut his mouth. Zoe screamed, her lungs burning, her hands tearing at her own
hair.
The doors slammed shut. The penthouse went dead silent again. Zoe dropped to her knees in the middle of the broken glass and spilled liquor. Her breathing came in jagged, terrifying gasps. He was telling the truth. For 3 years, he was telling the truth. She snatched her phone off the desk with hands that could barely grip the glass. She dialed Chase's number. The number you have dialed has been disconnected or is no longer in service. No, 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 please God, no, Zoe whimpered. She frantically pulled up the Raindrop Fund app. She opened the administration portal, the one she had used as a high-tier donor, to lodge the fraud report yesterday. She clicked on Chase's campaign, Raindrop. Fund number 8842, stage 4 lung cancer support for Chase Hudson. A giant red banner stretched across the top of the screen. Campaign cancelled by user. Below it, in the system audit logs, was a small, automated notification. Timestamped 2 hours ago. System note. User Chase Hudson declined to submit updated medical verification. Pursuant to platform policy, all funds, $10,001.16, have been refunded to donors. Refund processed. $1 returned to Zoe Hudson. Refund processed. 1 cent returned to Andrew Lane. Zoe's phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. The $1 she had given him. The dollar she had sent to mock him. To force him to bow down, to tell him to let her know when he was really dead. He had refunded it. He had thrown it back in her face. Customer service, Zoe sobbed, grabbing the desk phone and punching the hotline. For the Raindrop Fund headquarters. Connect me to the fraud department. Now. A few seconds later, a representative answered. Raindrop Fund support, how can I? My name is Zoe Hudson, she screamed into the receiver, her voice raw, pathetic, desperate. Campaign 8842. My brother. I reported him yesterday.
I
Said his medical records were fake. I was wrong.
You was lied to.
Please tell me where the medical records came from. Tell me which hospital issued them. Ma'am, please calm down, the rep said cautiously. We cannot share personal medical data with third parties. I am his sister. Zoe roared, breaking down into hysterical, guttural sobs. I am his only family. Please. He is dying. Tell me where he is. There was a long pause on the other end. The representative's tone suddenly shifted, losing its cold, mechanical professionalism, replacing it with a heavy, uncomfortable hush. Ms. Hudson, I remember that campaign, the woman said quietly, because the patient called us himself after you filed the report. When we told him we were freezing the funds, he didn't argue. He didn't get angry. He just asked us if we could return the money to the people who donated. Where did the records come from? Zoe begged, sliding down against the side of her desk, pulling her knees to her chest. Please. Just tell me the hospital. St. Jude's Memorial Oncology Center, the woman said softly. Dr. Marcus Vance's unit. The diagnosis was validated by our medical board yesterday. Afternoon before the patient pulled the listing. Stage 4 small cell lung
Carcinoma.
late-stage metastasis to the pleura and bones. Ms. Hudson, those records weren't fake. He's been in severe physical agony for months. The world seemed to spin violently around Zoe. The ceiling, the lights, the dark. Rain outside. Everything smeared into a terrifying blur of gray and red. Stage 4. Late-stage metastasis. She remembered him standing near the mall 2 hours ago. The thin, hollow
Cheeks.
the way his hand trembled around the wooden handle of that trash sack. The way he gasped for air when she dragged him into the alleyway. "You ruin every single job I find," he had said to her, his eyes dead, his face blank. "If I don't dig through trash, what else am I supposed to do?" And what had she said to him? "Look at yourself. What do you think you look like? Can you just come home and apologize?"
Aya.
Zoe let out a choked, horrific cry, slamming her forehead against the hardwood floor over and over again until her skin bruised. "Chase.
Chase, I'm sorry.
Chase. Please, please, God, please." She scrambled to her feet, stumbling over her own heels, tearing them off and dropping them as she ran barefooted out of the office, into the private elevator, into the dark, rainy night. The rain in the slum district didn't smell like the clean, ozone-scented air of the corporate towers. It smelled of sulfur, garbage, and clogged sewage drains. Zoe's Mercedes-Benz plowed through the murky puddles of the city's eastern perimeter, stopping abruptly in front of a half-collapsed four-story tenement
House.
The paint was peeling in long, ugly strips. Half the windows were boarded up with damp plywood. 2 private investigators she had hired on the drive over pulled up right behind her. "Ms. Hudson," the lead investigator said, rushing over with a large black umbrella. "This is the address registered to the IP location he used to upload the fundraising page. Apartment 402. Zoe didn't wait for the umbrella. She dashed into the dark, filthy entryway, her silk stockings tearing against the concrete steps as she sprinted up 4 flights of stairs in the dark. "Chase," she screamed, her voice echoing down the narrow, trash-strewn hallways.
Chase. It's Zoe.
"Chase, open the door." She reached apartment 402. The door was a cheap slab of hollow wood, held together by a rusty latch.
She
Slammed her fists against it.
Chase. Please.
"I know about Andrew. I know everything. I was wrong, Chase. Please open the door." Silence answered her. Only the sound of rain dripping from a crack in the ceiling above. "Break it down," Zoe shrieked to the investigators behind her. "Break it down. Now." The heavy-set investigator kicked the lock once. The cheap wood splintered and swung open with a creak. Zoe rushed inside. "Chase." The room was smaller than her walk-in closet at home. There was no bed, only a thin, stained cotton mattress laid directly on the bare concrete floor. A single wooden chair sat in the corner next to a small, rusty electric heater that wasn't plugged in. The air was bitterly cold. "Chase," Zoe whispered, her voice trembling. The room was empty. Zoe stood in the middle of the dark room, turning around slowly. Her eyes drank in every detail of the squalor her brother had lived in for 3 years. On the floor beside the mattress lay a pile of crumpled, blood-stained tissues.
Dozens of them.
Near the wall stood 3 empty plastic bottles of the cheapest, generic over-the-counter painkillers available at gas stations, the kind that couldn't even dull a mild migraine, let alone the searing, bone-deep agony of late-stage lung cancer. On the small wooden chair lay a single wooden box. Zoe stepped toward it as if she were walking on landmines. Her hand hovered over the lid for a long time before she gathered the courage to open it. Inside the box were 3 things. First, a faded photograph of Zoe and Chase when they were children, standing in front of their parents' house, smiling in the summer sun. Chase's face in the photo had been carefully wiped clean of dust, while Zoe's side of the photo was covered in dried bloodstains, as if he had held it while coughing, unable to wipe her clean without ruining the picture. Second, a small rubber toy mouse, a cat toy. And third, a small line notebook with a bent wire spine. Zoe picked up the notebook with numb, freezing fingers. She flipped to the last written page. The handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged in places by dark, reddish water
Spots.
October 24th. Raindrop fund target, $10,000. Status: cancelled. Zoe's donation, $1 refunded. Andrew's donation, 1 cent refunded.
Peanuts. Accident compensation. $2,000.00.
Expenses. Cedar Ridge Memorial Cemetery. Section F. Plot 114, $2,000. Remaining balance. $1.15. Note. Peanut is gone. He didn't have to suffer anymore. I bought the dirt today. Section F is quiet. It floods when it rains, but I don't mind the wet. Zoe said she'll throw a party when I'm really dead. She doesn't need to spend her money. I paid for the plot myself. The dollar she sent was enough to remind me that I shouldn't have hoped for anything. I'm so tired. My chest hurts so much. I'm going to walk to the ridge now. I want to lie down. No. Zoe squeezed the notebook against her chest, letting out a strangled, breathless squeak.
No.
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 She turned and sprinted out of the apartment, down the stairs, almost tumbling, headfirst down the concrete steps into the rain. Cedar Ridge, she screamed at her investigators, her eyes wide, wild, completely insane with panic. Cedar Ridge Memorial Cemetery.
Drive.
Drive now. Cedar Ridge Memorial was located on the extreme southern edge of the city, right next to an industrial park and an overgrown drainage canal. By the time Zoe's car tore through the rusted gates of the cemetery, the sky had turned a deep, bruised purple, heavy with the gloom of late evening. The rain was falling in torrential sheets, turning the unpaved gravel roads into thick, treacherous mud. Section F. Zoe gasped, throwing the car door open before the vehicle had even come to a full stop. Where is Section F? The groundskeeper, an old man in a yellow rain slicker holding a flashlight, emerged from a wooden shed, looking startled. Hey, you can't drive on the
Grass.
What are you doing? Zoe grabbed the old man by his slicker, her rich clothes soaked, her hair plastered to her face, looking like a madwoman. Section F. Plot 114. Where is
It.
The groundskeeper recoiled from her wild eyes, pointing a shaking finger toward the lower edge of the property, down near the iron perimeter fence where the yellow floodlights didn't reach. Down there, by the ditch, the old man stammered. That's the low ground. It's mostly flooded right now. Zoe didn't let him finish. She ran. Her bare feet sank deep into the ice-cold mud, sharp stones cutting into her soles, but she felt no pain. She ran down the sloping hill, past the polished marble headstones of the wealthy, past the clean granite monuments, down into the dark, neglected corner of the graveyard where the grass gave way to weed-choked earth and puddles of brown, standing water. Chase, she called out, her voice torn to pieces by the wind. Chase. The floodlights from the distant highway cast a dim, sickly yellow glow over Section F. There, at the very edge of the plot near the rusted chain-link fence, sat a single, motionless figure. He was sitting on a low mound of turned-up earth, right beside a small stone marker that had no name carved into it yet, just a metal tag that read, Plot F 114. He was wearing his thin, washed-out denim jacket. His head was leaned back against the wet iron fence, his eyes closed, his pale face turned up toward the falling rain. Chase. Zoe let out a sob of pure, desperate relief and collapsed onto her knees beside him, wrapping her warm arms around his frail, soaking shoulders. Chase. I found you. Oh, God. Chase. I found you. He felt so light. So terribly, horrifyingly light. It felt as if she were holding a bundle of dry sticks wrapped in wet cloth. Chase, look at me. Zoe cried, pulling him into her lap, wiping the rain and mud off his face with her trembling hands. It's Zoe. I'm here. I know everything, Chase. Andrew confessed. Dean Vance came back. You were innocent. You were right all along. Chase didn't move. His face was cold. Ice cold. His lips were parted slightly, a tiny thread of dark, dried blood frozen on the
Corner of his chin.
His eyes, staring blankly past her shoulder toward the dark, empty sky, held no reflection. Chase? Zoe's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. She pressed her cheek against his chest. Silence.
No heartbeat.
No soft rise and fall of ribs.
No shallow, raspy breathing.
Only the cold, heavy stillness of a body that had surrendered long ago. His right hand was tucked tightly inside his denim jacket, frozen over his heart. Zoe, her mind completely splintering, gently pried his stiff, freezing fingers open. In his palm was a crumpled slip of paper, a receipt from Cedar Ridge Memorial, stamped with today's date. Payment received. $2,000. Status. Paid in full. Beside it, tucked into his pocket, was a small plastic adoption tag that used to belong to a stray cat named Peanut.
No.
Zoe whimpered, shaking him gently. No, Chase, wake up. Please wake
Up.
Look at me. I brought the car. We can go to St. Jude's right now. I'll hire the best doctors in the world. I have money, Chase. I have billions. I can fix this. She gathered his emaciated body into her arms, pulling him against her chest, rocking back and forth in the deep, freezing mud. Wake up. Please, Chase. Slap me. Hit me. Call me names. Just open your eyes. She shrieked into the empty night, her voice echoing off the cold stone markers around her. Don't leave me like this. Chase. Please. The rain continued to fall, cold and relentless, washing the dirt off his pale face, drowning her screams in the dark. 2 weeks later, the Hudson Manor, a sprawling 30-acre estate on the highest hill overlooking the city, was lit up like a palace. Thousands of crystal chandeliers cast a brilliant, blinding light across the manicured lawns. A 40-piece orchestra sat on the grand marble terrace, playing lively, upbeat waltzes. Servers in pristine, white gloves glided through the ballroom carrying trays of vintage champagne, roast pheasant, and delicate caviar canapes. It was the most expensive, extravagant party the city had seen in a decade. Yet there were no guests. The massive wrought iron gates at the end of the driveway were locked with heavy steel chains. Outside the gates, dozens of journalists, news cameras, and curious onlookers gathered, peeking through the bars in bewildered horror. Inside the grand ballroom, surrounded by towering arrangements of 10,000 pure white roses, sat Zoe Hudson. She was wearing a glittering, midnight black ball gown, her hair styled perfectly, her face painted with expensive cosmetics. But beneath the makeup, her skin was hollow, gray, and dead. Her eyes were bloodshot, staring glassy and fixed at the empty head of the long banquet table. At the head of the table sat a small, mahogany urn. Next to the urn was a small wooden box containing a rubber cat toy, a faded, blood-stained photograph, and a lined notebook open to a page that read, $1.00. Refunded. Play it again, Zoe said softly. Her voice was barely a breath, but the conductor on the terrace heard it through
His earpiece.
the orchestra nervously struck up the waltz for the 20th time. That night, the sweet, cheerful violins echoing hollowly off the empty gold leaf walls. Zoe picked up a crystal flute of champagne, raising it toward the wooden urn. Happy birthday, Chase, she whispered, her lips breaking into a wide, terrifyingly empty smile. You see? I kept my promise. A quiet tear tracked down her painted cheek, cutting a clean line through her foundation. I told you I'd throw a party, she giggled, a dry, broken sound that sounded like glass grinding together. A huge party, just like you wanted. Everyone is here.
Mom.
Dad, all your friends. She took a slow sip of the champagne, then set the glass down next to the urn. A heavy knock echoed from the heavy oak front doors of the manor. Zoe didn't move. She didn't turn her head. The doors creaked open, and her head of security walked in slowly, his face grim, holding a thick leather folder. Miss Hudson, the man said softly, stopping 10 feet away, keeping his distance from the eerie, tragic spectacle. The sentencing for Andrew Lane was finalized this morning. Zoe's smile didn't fade. Her eyes remained fixed on the urn. What did the judge say? 35 years without parole, the security chief reported. Academic fraud, extortion, identity theft, and criminal conspiracy. Because of your intervention with the state prosecutor, he was remanded to Blackwood Maximum Security Facility. His assets have been seized. He has nothing left. Nothing. Zoe echoed softly. Nothing, the man confirmed. He tried to appeal. He wept in the courtroom. Ms. Hudson. He screamed your name, begging you to pay for his defense lawyer.
He
Said he was dying of stress. Zoe let out a soft, airy laugh. Dying? Tell him, let me know when he's really
dead.
I'll throw him a party, too. The security chief shivered, bowed his head, and quietly backed out of the ballroom, closing the heavy oak doors behind him. The music played on. The 40 musicians on the terrace played with trembling hands, their instruments weaving a bright, joyful melody that floated over the empty lawn, over the locked gates, out into the quiet, dark night. Zoe reached out her hand, her long, manicured fingers gently tracing the polished dark wood of the urn. Andrew has nothing left, Chase, she whispered, leaning her forehead against the cool mahogany. He's in the dark now, just like you were. She closed her eyes, listening to the violins. And I'm here, she whispered, her voice finally breaking into silent endless.
Tears. I'm here at the party, Chase.
I'll stay right here with you until the lights go out.